Waterford North Quays. An Urban Design Framework Plan, 2008. This plan was prepared by LOSI, Urban Design Architecture, and Planning, for Waterford City Council. LOSI, 4 Lower Ormond Quay, Dublin 1, Ireland. Phone 01887 4448, fax 01872 8383, email info@losi.ie. www.losi.ie. This audio version of the document is being automatically read by the Amazon Polly service, Neural Language Engine, using the British, English, Male, Brian settings for best clarity, also available as non-neural, English Australian, Male, with Russell's accent, on this website. Irish accent is not available at this time. Contents 1.0 Introduction 1.1 Background 1.2 SEA Screening 2. Vision and Principles 2.1 Vision 2.2 Principles 3. Strategy 3.1 Heritage and Character 3.2 Land Uses 3.3 Urban and Block Structure 3.4 Urban Grain 3.5 Urban Space and Landscape 3.6 Movement and Access 3.7 Water and Recreation 4. Framework Plan 4.1 Framework Plan 4.2 Character Areas 5. Guidelines 5.1 General Guidelines 5.2 Projects 6. Implementation 6.1 Developing the Vision 6.2 Coordination and Delivery 6.3 Funding 6.4 Next Steps Appendix 1 Planning Context Appendix 2 Urban Analysis. An Introduction 1.1 Background. LOSI was requested by Waterford City Council to prepare an urban design framework plan for the North Quays area of the city. The Waterford City Draft Development Plan 2008-2014 states, "It is the policy of the Council that a master plan for the overall site be prepared so that a coordinated approach and key design principles, based on the previously adopted guidelines, will characterize the development." The objectives of the plan are 2. 1. Prepare, consider and agree a broad vision for the North Quays. 2. Prepare basic development concepts for the North Quays. 3. Bring together an integrated framework plan for the North Quays. 4. Provide a set of key urban design guidelines for the plan. 5. Set out measures for implementation. The Urban Design Framework Plan was prepared in consultation with the Council and a group of key stakeholders. 1.2 Strategic Environmental Assessment, SEA, Screening. The project was screened in accordance with planning guidelines for Strategic Environmental Assessment, SEA. Following consultation with the environmental authorities, it was concluded that a formal Strategic Environmental Assessment was not required. 2. Vision and Principles. 2.1 Vision. The vision for the area is to create a sustainable, modern, and innovative extension of the city centre with the opportunity to connect the city centre with Ferrybank, where a rich quality of life and unique sense of place can be experienced by residents, workers and visitors alike. 2.2 Principles. 1. To create a strong and complementary extension of the city centre. 2. To provide a rich and diverse mix of uses with no single dominant function, where a balance of living, working, retail and recreation can be achieved. 3. To create a distinctive quarter of real character and sense of place and to provide an adaptable and coherent urban form and structure. 4. To strengthen the character and identity of Ferrybank and to improve its connectivity to North Quays and city centre. 5. To foster attachment to place, through quality and richness of experience. 6. To create a framework of public and civic spaces of character and visual quality. 7. To create a waterfront that is a focus for complementary land and water-based activities and recreation. 8. To provide for sustainable patterns of movement and access with priority for pedestrians, cyclists and public transport. 9. To minimize the environmental footprint of the North Quays. 3. Strategy. 3.1 Heritage and Character. The heritage and character of the area is multifaceted and comprises of a range of elements. These include historical development and cultural aspects, the existing streets and patterns of development, buildings, topography and a landscape setting that presents a legacy for the city. Some of these aspects are positive and will play a vital role in shaping the new place, whereas others are of less value and can, and should, give way to a new era. Some essential heritage and character aspects considered worthy of conservation include: 1. The essential topography of the area, rocky outcrops and steep slopes and ridge lines. 2. The existing landscape, trees and fields. 3. Individual buildings and their setting, Sion Hill, Abbey Church and Graveyard. 4. The fine grain of buildings and focus of the community at Ferrybank. 5. Remnant dockland structures, cranes, mooring rings and crane tracks. 3.2 Land uses. A range of complementary land uses will be considered. In general, active ground floor uses will be preferred, with a mix of residential and commercial uses overhead. In certain areas live, work, and ground floor employment uses may be appropriate. The plan also acknowledges the potential of the area to accommodate a major destination building of cultural significance. The area will also need to provide necessary social and community facilities and both passive and active recreational uses. It is a particular objective of the plan to promote a vibrant mix of uses throughout the area and to avoid single-use blocks or areas. 3.2.1 Housing. The plan will promote a mix of housing typologies and sizes, to encourage variety as broad as practicable for social diversity. Housing will be focused on the upper floors of the fine grain blocks, in the form of townhouses, duplex-type apartments and normal apartments elsewhere. Most blocks, with the exception of the single-use blocks identified, should incorporate a proportion of residential use as indicated in the guidelines. The major focus of residential development, other than general mixed-use blocks and single-use blocks identified in the framework, will be at the Ardrey Hotel, Ferrybank and the East End. All new developments will be required to comply with Part 5 of the Planning and Development Act in relation to provision of social and affordable housing. It is expected that all social and affordable housing will be provided for and distributed throughout the plan area. 3.2.2 Employment. Local employment provides the basis for healthy and sustainable communities. The development of the North Quays will provide for significant local employment opportunities, initially in construction activities, but more importantly in local services, retail, office-based, and a range of local businesses. Live work and small unit employment uses will be focused on Ferrybank's East End. Significant office-based employment is provided for, within the robust mix of the area. The central location, and access to public transport and city centre services and attractions, provides a strong incentive for these types of uses. 3.2.3 Community support. Community facilities will be provided as a planning gain, and through development contribution schemes. Core elements of the framework strategy for community support will be the provision of a major cultural venue, childcare facilities in accordance with the requirements of the childcare facilities guidelines for planning authorities. It is envisaged that one significant childcare facility will be provided at the Ardrey, Ferrybank and at the East End, in support of the residential development there. The location and detail of these facilities will be agreed with the planning authority when preparing development proposals. 3.2.4 Amenity. The area is at present largely closed to the public, so that enjoyment of the natural amenity provided by the river and the waterfront is restricted. Further, access through the area is not pedestrian-friendly due to the car-dominated and heavily trafficked nature of existing routes and crossings and severance by heavy rail freight movements. The main contribution of the plan in this regard will be to open up the area for enjoyment by residents and visitors. This will involve the following key interventions. 1. Public access to the Ardrey site. 2. Improved access into and through the area for pedestrians and cyclists. 3. Introduction of signalled junctions at key intersections. 4. Upgrading of Dock Road to a pedestrian-friendly tree-lined avenue with traffic calming, widened footpaths and cycleways. 5. Public access to the waterfront. 6. A network of new urban spaces including a necklace of focal promontory spaces overlooking the river. The provision of a major destination venue of cultural significance will provide an additional amenity of local and regional importance for Waterford as a whole. 3.2.3 Community support. Community facilities will be provided as a planning gain, and through development contribution schemes. Core elements of the framework strategy for community support will be the provision of a major cultural venue, childcare facilities in accordance with the requirements of the childcare facilities guidelines for planning authorities. It is envisaged that one significant childcare facility will be provided at the Ardrey, Ferrybank and at the East End, in support of the residential development there. The location and detail of these facilities will be agreed with the planning authority when preparing development proposals. 3.2.4 Amenity. The area is at present largely closed to the public, so that enjoyment of the natural amenity provided by the river and the waterfront is restricted. Further, access through the area is not pedestrian-friendly due to the car-dominated and heavily trafficked nature of existing routes and crossings and severance by heavy rail freight movements. The main contribution of the plan in this regard will be to open up the area for enjoyment by residents and visitors. This will involve the following key interventions. 1. Public access to the Ardrey site. 2. Improved access into and through the area for pedestrians and cyclists. 3. Introduction of signalled junctions at key intersections. 4. Upgrading of Dock Road to a pedestrian-friendly tree-lined avenue with traffic calming, widened footpaths and cycleways. 5. Public access to the waterfront. 6. A network of new urban spaces including a necklace of focal promontory spaces overlooking the river. The provision of a major destination venue of cultural significance will provide an additional amenity of local and regional importance for Waterford as a whole. 3.2.5 Recreation. Linked to the amenity provisions will be the extension of berthing facilities for recreational craft and the encouragement of static vessels. Activity will be reinforced by new small unit retail, cafes, restaurants and related leisure uses focused on the south-facing waterfront. New quays will replace the existing wharves. The new quay wall will take the form of solid revetments using high-quality facing materials. The treatment of the waterfront space will require a consistent design approach and coordination of street furniture, such as lighting, railings, planting and benches. Public art on the waterfront will be required as part of significant development proposals. It is envisaged that the promontory features breaking the line of the waterfront will take the form of lightweight piled or cantilevered structures allowing the passage of water underneath. The new quays will also facilitate the berthing of larger vessels to allow regattas, visiting liners and events such as the tall ships to be hosted utilizing both sides of the river. There is an opportunity to develop an outdoor public bathing facility. One example of a successful precedent type of public recreational amenity is illustrated. 3.2.6 Energy and infrastructure. In broad terms, environmental sustainability will be achieved through the provision of a compact, robust and adaptable urban form, a mix of uses and promotion of environmentally friendly modes of movement. Other measures will play a vital role in underpinning this framework as a potential model for sustainable development, including 1. Combined heat and power, CHP. 2. Passive solar design techniques. 3. Sustainable building technologies. All essential building services and utilities should be underground, preferably located under footpaths, where possible for ease of access and maintenance. 3.2.7 Parking. The application of parking standards for the area must have regard to its intended function as a pedestrian priority extension to the city centre. Access to the North Quays area, south of Dock Road, is constrained by the railway line and associated level differences, and this will affect the potential for off-street parking. Consequently, and to achieve new building frontages on narrow sites between Dock Road and the railway line, a relaxation of parking standards and provision of on-street spaces as part of the design of the new urban avenue may be appropriate. Generally, parking within the remainder of the area south of Dock Road will be accommodated in underground car parks and surface parking. On-street parking will be discouraged due to its relatively restricted nature. Formal arrangement with Inroad Air for the use of its parking facilities in the redeveloped train station, to serve special events and occasions, will be investigated. 3.3 Urban and block structure. The urban structure for the North Quays is informed by the local topography, landscape and the water body. The principal aspects of the urban structure are the connections to surrounding areas, such as the waterfront and streets connecting to Dock Road and beyond, and high levels of permeability within the area. The Dock Road provides an opportunity for a new urban avenue and an important artery for the city. The North Quays will need to relate to this artery in terms of access, activities and urban form. The main access points from the Dock Road to the area will provide a high degree of physical and visual accessibility for residents, workers and visitors. The connections between Ferrybank and the new waterfront will be prioritized. The waterfront will be a major route providing access to the quayside and the water and connecting with future strategic and amenity walks following the course of the river. The expansion of the city centre to the North Quays will be achieved through the construction of the new cycle and pedestrian-only bridge spanning the river. This bridge will enable the expansion of the main street and space structure of the city centre by providing new connections to the North Quays, Ferrybank and the larger environs. The structure will provide for new linkages to public transport. The railway station will be incorporated into the urban structure, significantly improving local access and larger accessibility. The size, shape and nature of the area dictates that a robust block structure is necessary. This structure provides a range and diversity of robust block types and sizes and maximizes opportunities for access. 3.4 Urban grain. The longer-term success of the area will be dependent on achieving a high degree of physical adaptability and diversity of use. The most important measure of adaptability is urban grain. A fine grain of development is recognized by best practice elsewhere as a key component in existing, successful areas, and is considered necessary to support a diversity of uses and physical typologies at different scales. The plan provides for a permeable and connected network of streets and spaces that gives rise to a range of block sizes and types. The perimeter block is the preferred and tested building typology, and it is highly appropriate to the North Quays. The perimeter block distinguishes between public and private spaces, allowing public space to be actively fronted and passively policed, while also allowing flexibility in architectural and design solutions. In restricted areas such as at Ardrey, the steeply sloping topography will have a particular influence on both the urban structure and the design and layout of constituent blocks. Development of this site will need to be carefully considered to avoid ambiguity between the fronts and backs of buildings and access constraints, while acknowledging the potential for views and sun aspect afforded by stepping down the site. To provide for a fine grain of development in key areas, the plan requires the subdivision of certain blocks into smaller parcels comprising different buildings of broad typology with different design approaches. This grain will provide continuity of the syntax of the city centre and provide for diversity of use, vitality and appearance. At least one block within each significant landholding, south of Dock Road, is allocated to fine grain development with individual plots of 5 to 10 metres wide. With the exception of the single-use or solid blocks identified in the framework for single uses such as cultural venues, other blocks must be broken down to a medium grain format as described in the guidelines. Providing a fine grain in the urban structure provides challenges in terms of current development models. However, this must be balanced with the importance of providing for the longer-term viability of the area, and integration with the fabric of the South Quays. There are notable examples where fine grain has been incorporated into successful docklands areas elsewhere. 3.5 Urban Space and Landscape. The plan provides for the linking of the existing civic spaces of the city and a new sequence and variety of spaces. The new spaces are in essence a necklace of spaces and promontories connected by the waterfront, ferrybank and surrounding areas. The significant urban spaces are: 1. The train station forecourt and promontory. 2. The train station underpass and promontory. 3. The bridge landing and promontory. 4. The main civic space and promontory connecting ferrybank and the waterfront. 5. The eastern beacon and connection to the riverfront. The plan envisages the development of the urban village at Ferrybank, and this will require a careful consideration of its public domain and urban space. There is an opportunity to provide a vantage point or promontory park overlooking the city from the landscaped ridge at and above the Ardrey site. Connections to the wider landscape structure, in particular Ferrybank and its backdrop of ridges and the riverfront landscape, is an important feature of the plan. The new landscape structure acknowledges the potential and importance of the landscape outside of the plan area in visual and amenity terms. The relationship and interface between the frontage, ground floor uses, the waterfront and water-based activities, will be crucial to the function and success of these spaces. 3.6 Movement and Access. The movement framework provides for a balance in the available and potential modes of transport. At the strategic level, the plan takes advantage of existing and planned public transport and road and street infrastructure. Direct connections to the train station will be provided. The street structure will allow direct access to planned, quality bus services on Dock Road. The new bridge will provide easy access to the existing bus station. The framework prioritizes pedestrian movement and access, and integrates local and strategic cycle routes. The waterfront and several streets will be pedestrian priority or pedestrian only in nature. The bridge will provide a vital link between the pedestrian and cycle networks of the north and south sides of the river. Additional pedestrian bridges from Dock Road to the North Quays over the railway line will be provided. Options for general vehicular access to the North Quays are limited. Excessive road engineering and grade separation solutions will not be acceptable. Limited road bridge access is currently available from Dock Road. This will need to be improved and upgraded to serve future development. The substandard level crossing at Ferrybank will not be adequate to serve development, and a new road bridge will be required at or near this location. Given level and road gradient issues, access will need to be provided from Dock Road at a suitable location between the junction with Rockshire Terrace and Abbey Road. Alternatively, or additionally, access may be required from Abbey Road. New access arrangements will require the cooperation of different landowners. The City Council will facilitate or lead this process, through informal or statutory processes, as appropriate. All bridge proposals and designs will need to be considered in conjunction with Erin Road Arran, and all points of access over the railway line are contingent on achieving sufficient levels to ramp and cross over the line, with sufficient clearances and to provide equal access for all. 3.7 Water and Recreation. The waterfront, the activities on the waterfront, and the water itself, will provide a new amenity for the city. Recreation and water-based activity will depend on easy and comfortable access to these new facilities and the relationship with frontage uses. The principal element will be the provision of a comfortable public waterfront area of the highest quality, with the addition of significant new promontories. Additional facilities such as pontoon access, marina moorings and static vessels will also be required. This plan outlines a recreation strategy. 4.1 Framework Plan. The framework plan brings together the different strategy aspects needed. It illustrates in diagrammatic form the preferred new urban structure, new streets and spaces, the distribution and architectural massing of new urban blocks. 4.2 Character Areas. It is recognized that certain sub-areas within the overall framework have an existing character that derives from their location, heritage, and character elements. It is intended that the future development of these areas will build on and respect their existing positive character aspects. These character areas are described below. 4.2.1 The Ardrey and Sion Hill House. This sub-area is defined by its topography and landscape features. The sloping site divides naturally into lower, middle and upper portions. It is envisaged the lower portion fronting Dock Road will lend itself to mixed uses and commercial development. Sion Hill House is a protected structure within a mature landscaped setting and attendant grounds. Any application for development of this site must be considered having regard to the provisions of the City Development Plan, and the Architectural Heritage Protection Guidelines for planning authorities. The Ardrey Hotel site is presently dominated by the former hotel building, which is now vacant. The lower portion of this site fronting Dock Road is suited to general mixed retail, residential and commercial uses. The middle portion is suited to residential and small retail unit, or service units. The upper portion of the site sits partly in the city administrative area and partly in the Kilkenny County Council administrative area. This should be reserved as a public space and may form a part of a potential amenity or attraction, such as a public promontory, park or vantage point. Development of the upper portion will have to respect the existing ridge line and landscape features of the site. 4.2.2 Dock Road. The Ardrey and Ferrybank are linked by Dock Road. This will be remodelled as an urban avenue, with mainly mixed-use commercial uses fronting the new street. The impact of traffic will be reduced by providing for greater priority for pedestrians, cyclists and public transport. The avenue should be returned to a single carriageway with dedicated bus and cycle ways. Generous footpaths should be provided either side for pedestrian and ground floor activities. The avenue should be further defined by structured tree planting. This, along with appropriate, on-street car parking and build-outs, should provide a more calm route. Additional signalled junctions should be provided for the access to the North Quays. This will reduce vehicular traffic speed. 4.2.3 Ferrybank. Ferrybank will be reinforced as an urban village. New focal space connecting with the waterfront will be provided, and a mix of uses and neighbourhood services will be provided to augment the existing services. 4.2.4 East End. Regeneration will extend southwards and towards the eastern end of the North Quays. This area, already used for small-scale employment, has the potential to consolidate this role through the introduction of mixed-use residential, with live work and new employment uses. 4.2.5 Waterfront. The waterfront will be the focus of public open space of active and passive recreation, leisure, active ground floor uses, civic and cultural uses, and access to the water. The relationship between the waterfront space, the river and river activities, and the frontage development is critical to the success of the place. 5. Development Guidelines. 5.1 General Guidelines. 5.1.1 Diversity. Waterford South Quays present a fine grain of buildings, with a great degree of architectural diversity. This is derived from incremental development on narrow plots. The waterfront space and building line bring a strong overall diversity and coherence to this frontage. This is an essential part of the expression of the city's character and the basic language of the waterfront. While the development of the North Quays is likely to be carried out in a more comprehensive manner, it must not present single design solutions to all or significant parts of the frontage. The emphasis will not be on prescribing architectural style, but on achieving architectural diversity. This will be done in these ways. 1. Providing for a diversity of adaptable urban blocks. 2. Subdividing urban blocks into development plots. 3. Vertical subdivision of buildings. 4. Provision of ground floor entrances. 5.1.2 Blocks and plots. The location of the block types reflects the uses and functions for the area. Larger ownership patterns were considered when allocating block types to address spread and feasibility. Each significant landowner will be required to provide an element of fine-grained development as part of the overall development of their lands. 3 block types are designated. 1. Solid blocks. These blocks will be reserved for significant larger uses, such as a public venue or major cultural or civic destination. 2. Medium grain blocks. These blocks will comprise the main fabric of the area. 3. Fine grain blocks. These blocks provide for a fine subdivision pattern, focused on their main frontages. Solid blocks. 2 blocks are designated as solid. The first is located at the landing of the new bridge. This block will allow for a significant new building with a high degree of public use and access. It may be a focus of activity in terms of retail, services, entertainment, etc. The second is provided at East End. This block will be the preferred location for a significant cultural or civic building of regional importance. These blocks will become major landmark buildings on the waterfront, and their development may be the subject of architectural design competitions. No other blocks may be comprised of a single-use building. Medium grain blocks. The medium grain blocks will provide a balance between physical adaptability and development. These blocks will typically comprise at least 3 separate plots/buildings to the principal frontages. The subdivision of the blocks fronting the waterfront will be particularly important. Fine grain blocks. At least 1 fine grain block will be required in each of the main land holdings, south of Dock Road. The main frontage of each fine grain block must be subdivided into individual development plots of 5 to 10 meters wide. It will be a requirement that a different architectural firm will be commissioned to design each such plot, and that each plot will be accessed individually where feasible. The coordination of any shared elements will be achieved by way of an overall development brief for the block and overseen by a lead architectural consultant. Alternatively, individual plots may be released to the market as self-build plots. 5.1.3 Density and Intensity. It is recognized that a balanced approach to density across the area is reasonable to facilitate the equitable spread of development amongst the various stakeholders. The plan favors an emphasis on intensity of development rather than on density per se. Development proposals will be assessed with reference to maximum plot ratios. The calculation of plot ratio divides the gross floor area of buildings above ground by the site area. Plot ratio allows flexibility in the massing and distribution of floor space across the sites and the plan area. The maximum plot ratio will be 2.5 to 1. This will produce a density of development commensurate with dockland developments in other major cities. This will be subject to meeting the appropriate access arrangements, appropriate scale and use relationships with existing adjoining and nearby development. Figures in excess of this, but not exceeding a plot ratio of 3 to 1, will be considered only in exceptional circumstances, where a clear and proportionate betterment, such as a civic facility or other community, cultural or destination facility, is provided as part of a development, on a part of a site or elsewhere in the plan area. This provision will require detailed consultation and consideration by the City Council. The Council will require property and development evaluations in support of this increase in plot ratio. Permitted density of development at the Ardrey site will be based primarily on design solutions, based on the principles outlined for the site in Section 4 of this plan. The density of development will not in any event exceed the overall provision of 2.5 to 1. The proposals must respond to the significant site and development constraints presented by the ridgeline, landscape and topography. The gross site area for the purpose of plot ratio calculation should include reasonably developable land, and should exclude land such as excessively sloping land and rock face. Close consultation with Kilkenny County Council will be required in the advancing of development proposals. 5.1.4 Mixed uses. It is an objective of the plan to ensure overall mixed uses across the area of 50% residential and 50% commercial/non-residential, based on land area. Active ground floors, especially along the waterfront and around the open spaces as well as on Dock Road, are required. Higher floor heights will promote the use of the ground floor for commercial activities like restaurants, bars, services, shops etc. 5.1.5 Housing mix and standards. A range of residential unit sizes will be promoted to encourage a diversity of household sizes in the area. To achieve this, a maximum of 15% one-bedroom units will be permitted in any one scheme, and a minimum of 15% three-bedroom units must be provided. Reference is made to DOE, HLG Guidelines for Planning Authorities, Sustainable Urban Housing, Design Standards for New Apartments. Minimum apartment sizes will be as follows. One-bedroom units 45 square meters, gross floor area. Two-bedroom units 73 square meters, gross floor area. Three-bedroom units 90 square meters, gross floor area. Four or more bedroom units plus 10.5 square meters, per additional bed space. Larger unit sizes will be required to compensate for additional vertical circulation requirements, like duplex units. All residential units must be provided with dedicated storage space and private open space to be assessed on a merit basis, having regard to the detailed considerations set out in the Waterford City Development Plan, and the above-mentioned guidelines. 5 Development Guidelines. 5.1.6 Building height. The context height of the area is influenced by the following parameters. 1. Respecting existing scale and typologies of the city. 2. Achieving sustainable densities of development. 3. Maintaining a human scale to streets, spaces and the waterfront, providing appropriate levels, continuity and enclosure. 4. Reflecting local constraints, such as protected structures and existing development, emphasizing place and location. 5. Emphasizing significant use or function, maintaining quality private and semi-private open spaces within the block. Microclimatic considerations. Indicative building scale is shown on the indicative sections below. This scale of development is considered appropriate to meet the above parameters. Increases in height will be considered for the solid/landmark blocks, where a significant use is proposed or included in development. Height variation will be encouraged through diversity of building usage and type, within appropriate relationships. For this reason, building height will be considered with reference to an appropriate range of stories rather than preset building heights. Corner buildings or corner elements of buildings should meet the maximum story height to provide definition for the blocks. The proper and coherent finishing of the top floor of buildings, and their elevations, will be preferred to setback stories. The roof space and roofscape should be carefully considered as finishing elements. 5.1.7 Streets and bridges. Existing and upgraded streets and avenues. The two existing streets, Dock Road and Abbey Road, will need to be upgraded to provide appropriate function, access and scale for the North Quays. It is proposed that Dock Road will be remodeled as an urban avenue. This will entail the reconfiguration of the carriageway, junctions and footpath. The new avenue will need to provide for active uses at ground floor level, comfortable footpaths, dedicated cycleways, bus lanes, plus a two-way undivided carriageway for general traffic. Uses on the avenue will be mixed and will support and reflect existing uses, for example, at Ferrybank Village. The scale of development on both sides shall be sufficient to provide adequate continuity and enclosure. A maximum height-to-width ratio of approximately 1:1 would be appropriate. Abbey Road will function as a smaller scale, urban avenue with a lesser movement and access function. It will need to provide for comfortable footpaths, with cycle lanes and undivided carriageway. Again, the scale of development on both sides shall be adequate to provide appropriate continuity and enclosure. A maximum height-to-width ratio of approximately 1:1 would be appropriate. New streets. The new streets in the development can be categorized as 1. The main spine or access street. 2. River streets. 3. Access streets. The main spine/access street will provide the principal access points for the development of the area. It will also unlock existing land holdings. The street will provide a strong connecting element between different land parcels in the plan area. The development of the area will be predicated on achieving this route, and it will be seen as a first phase element of the plan. The route will be provided as a joint proposal of the appropriate landholders. Failing agreement, or lack of progress in the provision of this route early in the first phase of the plan, the City Council will invoke its powers of acquisition. The streets will provide looped road and bridge access into, and through the area. The route will need to accommodate significant ground level issues, and will need to include ramps and altered ground floor levels in certain locations. A detailed study and proposal for the route will need to be carried out, as a first phase element. The river streets will provide some perpendicular streets to the waterfront edge. These streets reflect the existing city typologies and will provide intimate proportions and views to the water. The orientation of the streets will allow solar access for part of the day. Units on the river streets will need to provide a dual aspect to achieve good solar infiltration to the interior of the perimeter block. The river streets will allow for access to basement parking and a low degree of service access, and loading access, for example, to the waterfront boats. Access streets will provide for a low level of loading, services and emergency. The waterfront will be considered as having the same traffic movement function. 5. Development Guidelines. 5.1.8 Key Spaces. The main urban spaces will form the visual and functional focal points for the area. It is important that these spaces are carefully shaped and designed to provide 1. Physical adaptability. 2. High quality, durable and consistent approach to materials of construction and finish. 3. Strong relationships between the surrounding buildings, particularly the ground floors and the use of the spaces. 4. Continuous surfaces where possible by carefully grading and sloping to match building ground floors. Detailed design proposals will be required for the bridge landing public space. This space will need to provide for the bridge landing and connections from there to Dock Road. The bridge may be elevated above the public space to provide direct connections from the South Quays to the Dock Road. In this case, the handling of access from the bridge to the space will be crucial. The public space will need to prioritize the waterfront connectivity. The ground floor of the space will need to be active. The new pedestrian civic space, connecting Ferrybank and the waterfront, spanning the railway line, will be a wide-spanning structure, which will be graded smoothly from Ferrybank over the railway line and down to the quays to provide a comfortable and attractive area, and a setting for the major destination building. The design and detail of this structure will require detailed consideration. The relationship with frontage buildings will also require careful consideration, as it is expected that some degree of active frontage will be provided. This structure and the space should be the subject of a design competition. All public spaces and the waterfront will be designed so as to be taken in charge by Waterford City Council. 5.1.9 Parking. Applicants will be required to comply with the parking standards set out in the Waterford City Development Plan, except where they can clearly demonstrate such compliance is unfeasible or unnecessary. All applications must comply in full with the standards for cycle parking facilities set out in the development plan. It is expected that where possible, basement parking will be provided. On-street parking will be limited in location and numbers, and will be primarily for the use of residents and their visitors. On-street parking management will be finalized on completion of the development. Group resident parking, such as small multi-level parking areas, may be provided where opportunities exist to use such differences in grade. All parking proposals must conform to the design criteria for parking set out in the development plan. 5. Development Guidelines. 5.1.10 Sustainable Development. Sustainability criteria should be considered at macro and micro levels. Further, sustainable objectives should not only seek to satisfy environmental criteria, but also ensure that social and economic objectives are achieved. At a macro level, proposed development should seek to 1. Utilize land efficiently through appropriate densities. 2. Ensure an adequate mix of uses provided locally in order to reduce the need to travel, and 3. Maximize access to sustainable modes of transport including cycling and public transport. By establishing the required critical mass, it is possible to support local services and amenities within walking distance of homes. At the site planning level, sustainable urban form should ensure that an appropriate microclimate is established between buildings. Equally, sustainable urban forms should ensure that buildings receive adequate levels of light, ventilation and passive solar energy, whilst minimizing heat loss and exposure. At this scale, proposals should also investigate the feasibility of 1. Alternative energy sources. 2. Sustainable urban drainage systems, SUDS, and 3. Waste recycling facilities. At a micro level, the building designs should seek to 1. Reduce energy demand, including thermal energy for space and water heating, and electrical energy for power and lighting. 2. Maximize solar potential and aspect, and 3. Provide for building evolution through adaptable design. In order to implement these objectives, the planning authority will require all new residential developments, within the North Quays plan area, to achieve a minimum building energy rating, BER, of B2. This will be required to be demonstrated as a preliminary rating at planning application stage, calculated in accordance with the approved Dwelling Energy Assessment Procedure, DEAP. 5.1.11 Flooding. The final ground level of the North Quays shall be raised to provide appropriate protection from flooding. Developers must satisfy themselves that the final ground floor level of proposed development will satisfy this consideration. This shall be done in consultation with the City Council. Currently, 2008, a new waterfront floor level of 3.5 meters above ordnance datum is required. 5.2. Projects. The following key projects are identified as having the potential to provide the catalyst for development. It is an objective of the plan to actively promote the development of the projects and/or to favorably consider to any development proposals that may secure their provision as planning gain, subject to the planning authority being satisfied that such proposals will be consistent with the proper planning and sustainable development of the North Quays in general, and with the relevant provisions of the plan in particular. 5.2.1 Bridge. The proposed pedestrian bridge will be a key enabler of development, not only opening up the area for development and associated footfall, but potentially serving as an icon for the area and the city. The design of the bridge will be a crucial factor in the success of the area, and overcoming access constraints arising from level differences. There is an opportunity for the bridge to simultaneously connect the South Quays with the North Quays while also providing a link to Dock Road. This will provide some design challenges in terms of providing such equal access from the bridge in a practical yet by an elegant engineering design solution, and, accordingly, it is recommended that this element will be subject of an international design competition. This, in turn, will require a detailed design brief to be prepared. 5.2.2 Youth Maritime Resource Centre. The potential for a youth maritime resource centre has been identified. This would serve to consolidate Waterford's maritime traditions and provide an educational resource for local groups, such as Sea Scouts, sailing and boating clubs and local schools. A potential site for the centre is identified in the framework plan at the eastern end of the site. 5.2.3 Harbour Baths. There is an opportunity to develop an outdoor floating public baths adjacent to the waterfront. This would provide a unique attraction to the area and an amenity for residents, employees and visitors. Typically, such baths would be open air, with one bottomless pool enclosure and one enclosed both at the bottom and sides. There is ample precedent for successful harbour baths elsewhere that can serve as an appropriate model. 5.2.4 Crane Tower. The Crane Tower is a unique remnant of the area's dockland heritage, and one of few such surviving features. It is an objective of the plan that the crane structure and associated tracks be conserved as a reminder of this heritage, and, if feasible, rehabilitated to accommodate a new waterfront-related activity. This will require a feasibility study to be undertaken having regard to the physical integrity of the structure, industrial conservation issues, access, health and safety and possible uses. Alternatively, and in the interim period, the structure should be made safe and preserved in situ. Regard will be shown to the DOE, HLG's Architectural Heritage Protection Guidelines for planning authorities. 5.2.5 Ferry. The feasibility of providing a water taxi linking the South and North Quays should be investigated. A critical mass of new development will have to have occurred before such an initiative will be commercially viable. This could be procured by public tender. 5.2.6 Civic buildings. There is an opportunity to anchor commercial and residential development and to attract major cultural events to Waterford, by developing a new multi-purpose venue, of regional significance in the North Quays area, a venue that the city currently lacks. Such a venue would have a medium to large seating capacity, with capability to be used for a variety of related functions, such as theatre or concert hall, conference and educational facility. The design of such a building would entail preparation of a detailed design brief and architectural design competition. The preferred location of the venue is indicated on the framework plan, occupying a waterfront position towards the east end of the area. A second, more centrally located waterfront site adjacent to the landing of the proposed bridge, is identified for a smaller-scale civic building of city-wide significance, incorporating retail, service and commercial functions. 6. Implementation. 6.1. Developing the vision. The framework plan outlines a vision for the North Quays area, and a physical framework for achieving that vision. The framework will thereby inform both the preparation and assessment of detailed planning applications, and will have statutory effect as a local area plan within the meaning of the Planning and Development Act. 6.2. Coordination and delivery. It is imperative to avoid an ad hoc approach to development, that will prejudice the proper planning and sustainable development of the North Quays. This will require a coordinated approach to delivery. It is recommended that formal delivery arrangements be put in place to guide and monitor the implementation of the plan and to provide strategic direction as follows. 1. Establish a representative multi-sector steering group with appropriate structures for implementation and monitoring. 2. Devise a detailed implementation program that will set out necessary coordination measures, priorities, responsibilities and phasing. 6.3. Funding. Public infrastructure such as the new public spaces, bridge and supporting utilities will be of direct benefit to, and facilitate, the development of the area. The nature, extent and coordination of infrastructural provision will need to be established as a priority. 6.3.1. Development contributions. It is recommended that the Council should prepare a supplementary development contributions scheme under Section 49 of the Planning Act, to defray the cost of infrastructural provision, that will be of benefit to developers. 6.3.2. Capital funding. It is recommended that the Council should investigate other sources of capital funding, available for specific projects through the various National Development Plan sectoral programs, and Gateway Innovation Funding. 6.4. Next steps. 1. Set up the North Quays Area Steering and Monitoring Group. 2. Devise a detailed program of necessary coordination and enabling measures. 3. Prepare a supplementary development contributions scheme. 4. Prepare an alternative energy and environmental strategy for the area. 5. Identify and prepare competition design briefs for key elements including waterfront spaces, pedestrian bridge and landmark buildings. Appendix 1, Planning Context. The North Quays represent a major opportunity for the city and the region. The outstanding potential of the area has been identified in a number of previous plans, guidelines, a significant vision statement and a design competition. Appendix 1.1. National Plans and Strategy. Waterford was designated as a gateway centre in the National Spatial Strategy 2002, NSS. Gateways should drive the development of their wider regions, including surrounding towns, villages and rural areas, to achieve sustainable and more balanced regional development across the country. If balanced regional development is to work, the spatial structure must be supported by policies aimed at enhancing the attractiveness of such areas for people. The NSS mentions, as an example, opportunities for consolidating Waterford City around the River Suir, with particular emphasis on the potential for developing the North Quays. The National Development Plan 2007 to 2013, NDP, focuses investment according to the NSS. The National Development Plan identifies the renewal and development of the North Quays, along with infrastructure and transport improvements as one of the key investment priorities for Waterford. The promotion of regional development will be supplemented, inter alia, through the establishment of a Gateway Innovation Fund, GIF. For the initial period of 2008 to 2010, €300 million will be provided for local economic infrastructure or local capital programs. The GIF is an incentive to stimulate and reward joined-up strategies and action at gateway level by helping to fund targeted strategic projects that can trigger the accelerated development of the gateways and their wider regions. Appendix 1.2. Regional Planning Guidelines. The South East Regional Authority adopted regional planning guidelines in 2004. The guidelines state that it is important to emphasize development and regeneration of urban areas where infrastructure is already in place. When expanding urban areas, it will be critical to promote mixed uses and high-density development that is well designed. The guidelines mention the development of the North Quays as an exciting opportunity to enhance the attractiveness of areas for people and business. 9 enabling investment priorities have been identified in the implementation section of the guidelines. One such priority is significant expansion of the commercial, cultural and civic centre of Waterford City, through investment in, and support for, the redevelopment of the North Quays. 1.3. Local strategies and plans. The Waterford Planning Land Use and Transportation Strategy, PLUTS, was published by Waterford City Council in 2004 to provide a vision and a strategy for the development of Waterford City and environs to 2020. The strategy states that a key development challenge for Waterford and its environs is to fully harness its riverfront potential as a central focus for the development of a new Irish urban experience. This will involve addressing the current spatial development imbalance, and bringing the northern banks of the Suir fully within the economic and social ambit of an expanded Waterford City, which will be the economic driver for the region. The principal features include: 1. More balanced growth between north and south sides of the River Suir. 2. A new city centre bridge exclusively for pedestrians and cyclists linking the redeveloped North Quays with the existing city centre. 3. Provision of a rail passenger platform on the North Quays as part of a new public transport interchange. 4. Development of a high-quality bus-based public transport system in the city. 5. Completion of the N25 Waterford Bypass and the Outer Ring Road. The development of the North Quays as a northward extension of the existing city centre has been highlighted as one of the key components of the spatial strategy for Waterford. This landmark redevelopment site will form a new, modern, mixed-use district, with a major emphasis upon retail and office-based employment, in order to reduce growth at peripheral locations in the city. Other significant uses will include high-quality urban dwellings, a concert and exhibition building and a marine terminal capable of accommodating ocean-going cruise liners in the heart of the urban area. As part of the redevelopment of the North Quays, the strategy recommends that parking provision will be made in line with current parking standards contained within the development plan. Appendix 1, Planning Context. The Waterford City Draft Development Plan 2008 to 2014 sets out policies and objectives for the social, economic, cultural and environmental development of the city. It incorporates the principal components of the Planning Land Use and Transportation Strategy, PLUTS. In the Draft Development Plan, the North Quays area is zoned as mixed-use opportunity sites, and is described as follows. The term mixed use is used to describe development that includes an appropriate mix of different facilities. These might include shops, bars, restaurants, cafes, residential units, hotels, cinemas, leisure facilities as well as offices and certain types of low-impact industrial or enterprise activities. Mixed-use development can help create vitality and diversity, reduce the need to travel and can be more sustainable than development consisting of a single use. Mixed-use development, especially when residential use is included, can produce a general feeling of safety. The key to reducing antisocial behavior is to achieve greater pedestrian activity, especially by increasing the use of areas in the evening and by avoiding the creation of dead street frontages. The characteristics of modern industry and commerce are continuously evolving and many employment uses are increasingly compatible with residential environments. There are opportunities for many types of business operations to be carried out in tandem with residential use. The draft development plan designates 8 such mixed-use opportunity sites, 2 of which, the Ardrey and the North Quays, are within the study area. The development of these sites shall be based on an overall design framework for each site, and shall contain an appropriate mix of compatible and complementary uses. The developments shall be subject to the policies and objectives set out elsewhere in this development plan, including the retail strategy. The retail strategy defines certain streets in the city centre as core shopping areas and promotes the protection of the retail function of these areas. Furthermore, it identifies function and locations of district centres, neighbourhood centres, corner shops and retail warehousing. As required under Section 95 of the Planning and Development Act, 2000, the housing strategy sets the objective that 20% of the land zoned in the plan for residential use, or for a mixture of residential and other uses shall be reserved for the provision of social housing, and/or affordable housing. The development plan does not prescribe residential density standards. Rather, the appropriate residential density in any particular location will be determined by reference to certain qualitative and quantitative criteria having regard to the guidelines for planning authorities on residential density. The plan also sets out considerations relating to building lines and proposals for high buildings, and it also sets out parking standards. In October 1998, the Architectural Service of the Office of Public Works, OPW, prepared a development vision for the North Quays. It outlined of the following objectives. 1. To integrate the framework plan into its immediate context. 2. To achieve a coherent image for the North Quays. 3. To ensure the economic and social survival of the North Quays development as an area-based centre. 4. To promote mutual interdependence between activities on both sides of the river. 5. To create a pedestrian walk, linking a series of open spaces through the site. 6. To establish nodal projects at intervals along the quays. 7. To maintain the existing scales of the North Quays and surrounding landscape. 8. To promote a mix of uses on the site. In summary, the vision for the development proposed the following elements: commuter ferry, spine road, pedestrian walk, hotel and marina, venue building, mixed-use development, cruise liner docking station and public spaces. In 2002, the OPW organized an international architectural and urban design competition for the North Quay sites. The winning entry proposed buildings oriented perpendicular to the riverfront, in parallel lines. The proposed buildings were variable in height, with smaller buildings facing the riverfront and taller buildings to the rear. The proposal included a public square located strategically where the river bends, to expose long-distance views. The jury considered that the other entries had a number of shortcomings. 1. The scale of development proposed did not reflect the scale of existing buildings on the opposite bank of the river. 2. The entrance to the city through the train station was not adequately considered. 3. Access along the river was not provided for and the curve of the river was not respected. 4. Lack of consideration of views to and from the south side of the river. 5. Lack of regard to the impact on the land and housing to the north of the site. Project 2014 is a vision statement that sets out how some €2.4 billion will be invested in Waterford during the next 7 years to improve the quality of life enjoyed in the city. Project 2014 envisages the disused quays and man-made wharfs on the north side of the River Suir being transformed, with a master plan to guide a series of mixed-use developments and greater integration of the north and south quays, by way of an iconic new pedestrian bridge. It is anticipated further consolidation of the northern environs of the city within the administrative area of Kilkenny County Council will be guided by a local area plan. Appendix 2, Urban Analysis. 2.1. The North Quays Area. The area comprises approximately 28.5 hectares, strategically located on the north bank of the River Suir, and includes the docks, which stretch from Rice Bridge to the Abbey Church. The area also includes Plunket Railway Station, part of the site of the former Ardrey Hotel, which extends into the administrative area of Kilkenny County Council. The established development fronting onto the dual carriageway at Ferrybank and the bus Aaron Garage. The length of waterfront, distance between Rice Bridge and Abbey Church, extends about 1 kilometre. The distance between the riverfront and the railway line varies between 40 and 105 metres. Appendix 2.2. Urban Analysis. 2.2.1 Character. The site has become underused and derelict due to the relocation of port activities downstream. The most significant character element of the area derives from its location, opposite the historic city centre of Waterford, with the fine grain of its unique waterfront. However, the docks are separated from the existing neighbourhood at Ferrybank by railway tracks and a dual carriageway. The impression of character of the North Quays is consequently of significant obsolete industrial buildings, large open concrete surfaces and minor surviving light industrial uses. A further significant character element is provided by the steeply sloping topography north of Dock Road, up to the tree-lined ridge, overlooking the city. The ridge is dominated by the now disused Ardrey Hotel building. This is a large monolithic building constructed in an uncompromising modernist style, that does not respond to the topography. Consequently, there is a degree of conflict between the more gently undulating landscape character of this part of the site, and the built form of the hotel. 2.2.2. Historical development. The Vikings founded the city of Waterford in 1014, and defended their long fort or ship enclosure by building a fortification that, in turn, was the foundation to Reginald's Tower on the south bank of the river. From there, the city developed further to the south and west. In 1794, the first bridge over the River Suir, known as Timber Toes, was opened, so triggering development on the north side of the river. However, unlike the historic South Quays, the North Quays are largely a 19th and 20th century creation. The development of the new container terminal at Bellevue, which started in September 1993, has resulted in the migration of the portal and shipping uses to the new site. Appendix 2.2.3. Natural and built heritage. The quays are an assemblage of man-made wharves, which are incomplete and intermittent. They consist mainly of open spaces in which unused buildings and structures of significant scale such as lifting cranes, temporary storage sheds, large mill buildings and silos sit as reminders of Waterford's industrial and maritime history. The buildings present an imposing though incomplete frontage to the river. There are 8 protected structures in the study area. 1. RPS 507 Dock Road, number 14. 2. RPS 709 Dock Road, Plunket Railway Station. 3. RPS 529 North Quay, access to Ferry Point. 4. RPS 103 Ferrybank, Abbey Church of Ireland. 5. RPS 104 Ferrybank, Abbey House. 6. RPS 105 Ferrybank, Lodge to Abbey, Church. 7. RPS 106 Ferrybank, Sacred Heart Church. 8. RPS 107 Ferrybank, Sion Hill House. The South Quays and the oldest parts of the city centre around Reginald's Tower are designated as an Architectural Conservation Area, ACA. The natural landscape behind the quays rises sharply to the northwest with steep slopes along the quays from Rice Bridge to the west. To the southeast of the site there is an attractive natural landscape following the course of the river, including significant trees surrounding Abbey Church. This space has been zoned as open space together with small pockets on the northern side of the Dock Road. The gardens of Sion Hill House and existing Ardrey site are a green link to the countryside beyond. There are no special areas of conservation, SACs, or special protection areas, SPAs, defined in the study area. However, the River Suir itself is a candidate for SAC protection. Appendix 2.2.4. Microclimate. Waterford is one of the sunniest, mildest and driest parts of Ireland but is typical of the rest of the country in that it is protected from the more extreme temperatures that affect continental countries of the same latitude. The average minimum temperature in midwinter is 4 degrees Celsius. In July average temperatures vary between 12 degrees Celsius and 18 degrees Celsius. Much of the area enjoys good solar aspect due to its topography and the width of the river. As opposed to the mean annual rainfall for the wetter parts of the country of up to 2,800 mm, Waterford is less than half at around 1,000 mm. The prevailing wind direction in Waterford City is from the southwest, however the wind can be funneled along the river valley from any source, affecting temperatures on the waterfront. Appendix 2.2.5. Urban Form and Visual Analysis. The area is physically and visually contained between the water body and the hill to the north. The railway tracks separate the dockland area from the residential area of Ferrybank to the north. The South Quays and adjoining streets in the city centre have closed frontages and create a string of focal spaces at regular intervals. In contrast, the north side has no focal points and the frontages along both the streets and docks are inconsistent. 3 axial views were identified from the south side to the north. 1. Parnell Street/the Mall, past Reginald's Tower to Abbey Church. 2. Broad Street/Barronstrand to Sion Hill House punctuated by the clock tower on the waterfront. Note, it is believed that the entrance to Sion Hill House was intentionally placed on this axis by its original merchant owners. 3. Bridge Street over Rice Bridge. Glimpses of the river and views across to the North Quays can be experienced intermittently, as one walks parallel to the river along O'Connell Street, High Street and Bailey's New Street. The Ardrey Hotel dominates the western end of the skyline, in competition with the deserted silos, warehouses and receding line of low-density suburbia. Travelling in from the north, the gateway to the city is experienced as a view, from the intersection of New Ross Road, Abbey Road, and Fountain Street, lining up the Cathedral and Reginald's Tower. A similar perspective of the South Quays can be viewed from Rockshire Road. As noted previously, the view along the axis of Sion Hill House and the clock tower has historical significance. In general, however, the constantly inspiring and arresting view of the South Quay facade can be enjoyed at any point along the front of the North Quay. The facade of the South Quays is also revealed as one approaches the city along the N25 coming in from New Ross when nearing Plunkett Station. Appendix 2, Urban Analysis. A tissue study of the existing South Quays was carried out. The tissue study highlights the dimension of historic quayside blocks, the fine grain of plot subdivision within each block and variety in building size and height. 2.2.6. Land use and activities. Industrial activity on the waterfront of Waterford has moved on, leaving the shells of dock-related buildings vacant and obsolete. Some light industry remains in the northeastern portion of the site area, including the bus errand depot and small-scale automotive commercial uses. The existing retail is minimal and caters to the local market. Ferrybank urban village extends up and over the hill to the north with acres of semi-detached and other housing. This area is bordered by educational uses to the east and mixed uses further south. The southeast end of the docks is marked by significant trees and forms an attractive foreground to the Abbey Church. Above the site to the west there are the well-maintained and extensive grounds of Sion Hill House, which neighbours the even more expansive landscaped and increasingly steep bluff, from which the Ardrey Hotel dominates views, to and from the city. Below the cliff and at the far west end of the site lies the existing railway station. The old city centre on the south side of the river contains a mixed-use waterfront, a historic quarter focused on Reginald's Tower, a retail quarter, cultural uses, areas of mixed use to the west and southeast, and an urban village development. Appendix 2.2.7 Movement and access. The area can be reached using public transport, either by rail or bus. The train station is situated at the north end of Rice Bridge and to the west of the North Quays. The bus terminal is close to Rice Bridge on the south side. Within the city there are 6 different bus routes, but only one serves Ferrybank and the North Quays. The proposed green route will provide a high-quality bus service along Dock Road, connecting the suburbs and the city centre. Accessibility of both rail and bus services is severely restricted by the fact that the river is crossed by one bridge only. There are significant local barriers to pedestrian movement such as large inaccessible sites and lack of routes generally. The dock is not accessible to the general public. There are no established general access points from the North Quays and Ferrybank. Informal points of access have been established in a number of locations. By road Waterford is connected to Dublin, N9, and Clonmel, N24, these approach the city from the northwest at the train station. New Ross, N25, approaches the city from the northeast through Ferrybank, and Cork, N25, comes in from the southwest into the city centre. There is a ring road planned and under construction to reduce through traffic in the city centre, as well as park and ride facilities at the edge of the city. Within the study area, Dock Road, N25, and Rice Bridge are both regularly congested. This should be reduced through adequate traffic calming measures when the ring road is completed. While in the city centre some pedestrian areas and routes are already in place, a pedestrian waterfront in the north and a pedestrian bridge across the river are proposed in the city development plan. As there is only one bridge in Waterford at present, the river shore itself constitutes a barrier to north to south movement. The river also provides another direct access way to the city for recreational and fishing boats on the South Quays. The railway lines inhibit movement into and out of the North Quays sites. There are only 2 existing access points from Dock Road across the railway to the site at present, a level crossing, and an old restricted vehicular bridge.